Good morning. Chapters 11, Lesson 4 is on page 496. We're going to be multiplying radical expressions. Let's start off with something simple like number 17. Square root of 15 times the square root of 6. We know 15 is a 5 and 3. We know 6 is a 3 and 2. Remember, we want to have those prime numbers. So let's rewrite it. Square root of 5, square root of 3, square root of 3, square root of 2, which is square root of 5, square root of 9, square root of 2. And if we simplify that, we end up with 3, square root of 5, square root of 2. And if we put everything under nice and neat the radical, we end up with 3 radical 10. 5 times 2 gives me the 10. Let's try something like number 53. Number 53, we have the square root of x to the 2n, the square root of x cubed, y to the 3n, and the square root of y to the n plus 1. So what we could do, just for organization, is we could combine the x's, so we have 2n plus 3. We could combine the y's, and we have y to the 3n plus n plus 1. So we've combined our exponents. And we could break them apart if we needed to keep ourselves organized. And I'm kind of doing the same thing I did, but I'm going in reverse. So now this looks like x to the 2n and x cubed. And I'm just going to go over here and work on x to the 2nth to the 1/2 power, because that's really what that is. And this is just nothing more than x to the 2n times 1 over 2. Which is x to the 2n over 2, which when you simplify it, it becomes x to the nth. And we know that x cubed, the radical of x cubed, is nothing more than x squared and the radical x, which gives us x times the square root of x. So we took care of the first part, which gives us x to the nth times x times the square root of x. Now let's work on this second part over here. This gives us y to the 4th n plus 1. And we're going to go back and break those apart. Y to the 4th n times the square root of y to the 1st. Well, we know the square root of y to the 4th n is y squared. So if we simplify all this mess, we end up with x to the nth times x times the square root of x times y to the 2nd n times the square root of y to the 1st power. And what we can do is we can say here's an n to the x to the 1st power, so we can combine things. And our final answer, if we wanted to, it looks perfectly fine that way, but we could, let me move this, move this over there. Gives me a little more working space. We can say this becomes x to the nth plus 1 times the square root, let me back up, times y to the 2n, and we can put both the x's and the y's underneath the radical. So that's the answer that exists in the back of the book. X to the nth times x to the 1st is x to the nth plus 1. The y to the 2nth power, and then I combine both radicals for x and for y. A couple of tricky tricks on number 53, but if we go slow, it worked out just fine. See you all tomorrow.